long as you love, you will see me in the stars. As you look up at the stars, I will be there.
I'm Monica Charette, and this is Holding the Light.
As long as you love, I will whisper in your ear. Little whispers you will hear. As long as you love.
Reaching the 10-year milestone after the passing of her 33-year-old son, Wayne, Lena is finding solace in helping others embrace their grief journeys through a national network called the Compassionate Friends. But along the way, she's also discovered she is helping herself live more fully and more intentionally every day for herself and for her son. Join us as Colby and I hold the light with Lena Hann. Hi, Lena. So glad to have you as a guest on our podcast. Lena is sharing both her very personal experience of losing her son, Wayne, and offering her perspective as a child loss group facilitator with the Compassionate Friends. It's a very important resource offered to our grief community, which we will talk about. But before we do that, Lena, tell us what prompted you to reach out to us now to share your story.
Last June, 2 weeks before I retired from a job I'd been doing for 18 years, I was diagnosed with cancer. And it took me completely out of the blue. I went through months of testing, and at the end, it was determined that I didn't have cancer at all, or that the cancer had dissipated. And initially, they had thought that this spot on my lungs was something to be very concerning about. And when they went in, it had started to dissipate. And I woke up on January 1st. This year marks the 10th anniversary of Wayne's passing. And I felt like I had dodged something in a really big way. I survived cancer. It went away, and I felt that Wayne's going to be gone 10 years come July 15th. And you need to get out there and talk about him and share all that you've learned about grief. I logged in, and there was your information about it. And I was like, and Wayne speaks to me on a fairly regular basis. And he said, "Mom, that's your cue. Pay attention." And so here I am.
Well, we're grateful that you chose to join us today. It's been 10 years for me, too, as you know, grieving the loss of Cass. And I think I've shared with you how unexpectedly challenging it has been for me. Why do you think the 10-year milestone is so poignant in your grief journey?
I get emotional even talking about it, but it's 10 years without him. It's an entire decade. And over the years, like some of us, many of us, I have found meaning in my life. But 10 years is a long time to be without my son. And it's never going to, I'm never going to be able to hug him or anything like that. But it's a decade. It's a really long time.
Yeah, I think any life changes, too, during that time can make the absence of your child even more palpable. I think you would agree. For me, it's been watching my son grow into an adult and coming to terms with the milestones that Cassidy will not ever have. Graduations and marrying and graduating from medical school and starting a family. And so what life changes have been more pronounced for you in the last 10 years that might be adding to your grief?
The first couple of years after Wayne died, it was quite hectic, I will say. 9 months after my son died, my daughter's husband took his own life. Leading up to that, he had mental illness caused by PTSD. So I was busy helping take care of her, and then he died. And then 15 months after, her father died. So I was busy parenting. There was just so much. And at the same time, like some people, I chose to throw myself into work,
Mm.
in addition to working with compassionate friends that we'll talk about later. In 2023, I found out that I had heart disease. I was having stroke-like symptoms. So it was like, okay, Lena, you need to start paying attention, you know? And it was around that time that I decided that it was time for me to put in for my retirement. Many parents, as I've learned, you know, they don't want to live, or they're so depressed. I was not one of those people, but it made me believe how truly precious life is and was.
Let's talk about Wayne then.
Yeah.
He died at the age of 33 from a medical event. Can you tell us what happened to him?
Yeah. He died of heart failure. When Wayne was in his 20s, he was diagnosed with high blood pressure, and he dropped some weight, and we thought he was going to be fine. 10 days before he died, he said he was having fluid on his chest, and he'd had pneumonia 2 years before. And he was like, Mom, I'm not feeling well. I think I'm coming down with pneumonia again. I think I need to see the doctor. And, I was like, Wayne, it was over 4th of July weekend. I said, Wayne, wait until Tuesday, or wait until the 5th of July and reach out to your doctor. And so his father called me up. His father lived about 5 minutes away from me. And he called me up about 10 o'clock at night. And he said, Wayne took himself to the hospital. Can you go check on him, please? Because his father was of ill health himself. So I did. And I was surprised when I went in there. While I was there, I had to leave the room 3 times because they had to restart his heart. Off he goes down to main med. And while he was there, he was diagnosed with, they called it an electrical issue. He had 2 more blood vessels from the top of his heart going into the bottom of his heart. And over the years, his body was wearing down from all the work it was having to do. So they did a procedure. And when Wayne came to, he said to me, Mom, Nanny was there. And I said, what? And he said, Nanny was there. I saw Nanny and I saw the light. Wayne and I often talk about energy. He said, no, Nanny was there and we saw the light. And he said, Mom, I really wanted to go to it. And Nanny said, no, you have to go back to your mother. And he was like, Mom, but he was getting really like agitated, almost like, Mom, I need to tell you about this. Nanny was there.
Is Nanny your mother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nanny was my mom. And he was close to her,
Mm-hmm.
So Wayne started seeing the number 33 a lot. And he was very concerned that I would follow my parents who died. And I told him, I said, 33 is a sign of angels, and to make him feel better, I had bought him this sterling silver angel wing, and it made him feel better. Uh, but it happened often, and he'd come to me over the years and go, Mom, I'm seeing the number 33 again. And he died when he was 33 years old. I believe that he was sent home, that for those 10 days, um, to let me know. I believe my mom sent him back and said to let me know that he was going to a very good place, that I never needed to wonder where he was, because he was with Mom and he was with God and he was with this bright light. So the morning that he died, his father called me up and said, Wayne's not well. Um, I need you to come over, like right now. He said, the ambulance is on their way and we need to get him to the hospital. And when I got there, he was unconscious in the basement. Wayne had not been feeling well, and he said to his father, I'm not well." And his father said, "Okay." He said, "Let me go get my paperwork from the cardiologist from the hospital." And a couple of minutes later, Wayne hadn't come up, and his father was unable to get to the basement because of his own health conditions. And he looked downstairs, and Wayne was unconscious on the basement floor. So the paramedics came and worked on him for, oh, 45 minutes, like they're supposed to, or something. And he was pronounced dead, and his eyes were open. And he had died that quickly, So um, it was every parent's worst nightmare. One of the things that they did, the paramedics did, is Wayne was 6'5" and a very big boy. The body bag that they had brought didn't work, so they had to get a bigger body bag. But they left the body bag on the floor in the basement. So when Wayne was gone and when they were all gone and we were going downstairs, we're like, oh. And a couple of days later, my daughter said, she's like, Mom, you need to come over. You and I got to go somewhere. And I said, what's going on? And she said, that body bag's got to get the heck out of this house. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to do? Bury it in the backyard? And she said, no, I don't want it in the backyard. And I said, okay, where are you going? And finally, as we got close to the Lewiston dump, because I lived in Lewiston at the time, she said, I said, so this is where it's going. So we drove up to the dump and it was closed. And I said, okay, it's going anyway. So I tossed it over the fence and she said, I need you to look at the time. And it said 3:33. So Wayne was and did let me know that he was with me, and over the years he connects with me, and every year on my birthday I'll be driving in the car on the highway and I will see a license plate with either 3 threes or 4 threes. Things happen in my daughter's house that in the middle of the night that we know he's around. My stepdaughter finds things, so we know he's here. But yeah, it was the worst day of my life, but at the same time, over the years I've always been grateful that I had him for 33 years. So
And when Wayne had left the hospital after his initial surgery, was there any part of you that had thought this was a possibility? Was that maybe the beginning of your grief journey? Or once the 10 days had passed and Wayne, his heart had given out, was that really something that was completely out of the blue for you? Were you assuming that the surgical procedure was, a 100% success and this is impossible and he's healthy?
Yeah, I thought that everything was fine. The doctor said, no, he's going to be good as new in 10 days. The day that he died, he was scheduled to go see the cardiologist to get the clearance to go back to work. But in retrospect, I realized that that he was sent back for a reason.
Well, child loss certainly affects other people other than moms, and I was curious how this has affected your daughter and your extended family.
With my daughter, I mean, with everything that she was going through, she was grieving in such a big way. I guess it was about 3 years out that she and I were at the graveyard, and I was laying across the grave crying, and I started opening up. Prior to that, I was so busy protecting her that I wanted to protect her from all the pain that she had been through. And I was just completely grief-stricken. And we began to talk. And she said, Mom, I needed you to share this. I needed to share it with you. She said, because I needed to be able to really grieve myself. We have this picture that we found after her father died. And it was a picture that Giselle and I never knew existed, but it was a picture of Wayne and his father holding each other in their arms. with her arms wrapped around each other. And we had not seen it before. And she's felt when her father closed his eyes for the last time, Wayne was there, um, waiting for him.
To embrace him, right?
Yeah. And my stepdaughter, God love her, she was really, really close to Wayne. Her daughters um, feel him. They talk about him all the time. So we have made a point to include him in conversations. If you were to look around this house, boy, my house is filled with pictures of him. I have a family picture of my two stepchildren and my daughter, and I had Wayne superimposed in the picture. And I remember the photographer asking to do it, and said, "No, we're not going to do that." And I said, "If you don't, I'm going to find somebody else who did and will." Yeah, we feel the grief is just throughout all of it, in a really big way.
We're pausing here to let you know we're trying something new this season. We want to hear from you. If there is something you've learned in your grief journey that might be helpful for others, we invite you to leave us a voicemail message. I promise to listen to everyone. Some might even be used in a future Holding the Light episode. You're also welcome to just let us know what you think of this podcast. You can suggest a topic or request to be a guest. The number to call and leave a voicemail is 617-302-7373. We can't wait to hear from you. That's 617-302-7373. The number is also in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to our conversation. And you've turned your grief into purpose by starting a local chapter of the Compassionate Friends. So I'm sure our listeners, many of them might not know about that. I wonder if you could tell us about what that is and your role as a group facilitator.
I had heard of Compassionate Friends when a good friend of mine, her son died in a truck driving accident 32 years ago. And she had mentioned Compassionate Friends. And my family, God love them, I'm from Eastern Canada, and Friends, as much as they tried to help, I just needed to be around people who might understand. And I went to my first meeting and I cried and I barely spoke, but I found a place where others would understand my level of grief and I theirs. And it was a safe place to go to cry. About 5 years into it, the then leader needed to step down. And I was working 65 hours a week at the time. And, and she was looking for somebody to take over. And she approached me and I said, I just don't have the time. And so I had a dream about Wayne that night. And in my dream, boy, he came to me and he said, "Mom, yep, you." And I remember in the dream saying, "Wayne, like, really, I don't have the time." And he said, "Mom, they made a big difference for you. You make a difference for other people." And I say I'm the facilitator and I help put it together, but the grief runs itself. The universe takes care of us, and about a year into when I began to facilitate, I got a call from, or a message from David Kessler Training. Never heard about him for anything, and never heard about him at all in all of my grief, and said, "Your name has been given to us by Compassionate Friends. We would like to offer you this." I think it was it's 18-week grief educator certification, and there's a scholarship, and it's not going to cost you anything. So I felt like I was being directed.
So for those that don't understand, though, can you share what this is? Like, it's just for parents, right, who have experienced the loss of a child?
Compassionate Friends is an international organization who works with grieving parents, grandparents, and siblings.
Okay.
And they have chapters all over the United States. they had one in Lewiston, and I joined it. And they have a really great website with a lot of very valuable information. And they also offer support with questions that you might have. They have annual meetings, but their sole premise is to help people like me and others. And some chapters have both an in-person and online component. And in my particular regard, I tried that. It didn't work. The group members really needed to have that in-person contact with each other. And so unfortunately, I had to discontinue that. But it's, it's a group of people who come together and, and when I took over the group, at the time there were 27 members on an email format, and my name has gotten out there. And as of last night, the email group is numbered 89. I feel like my mission in life is to be there for these people, and people will come and be with each other, and you'll have somebody who is fairly fresh in grief, and I find them reaching out to somebody who is fresher, and speaking with them, and I say at the group, where crying is not only allowed, it's encouraged, and it's a place where people can feel that somebody gets them, and over the years, there's been some common denominators. People, as you know, don't know what to say sometimes. And sometimes, in spite of themselves, they say the wrong thing, and it really hurts. They mean well, but part of what I do is try and educate people about the things to say and not say. It's be present, and this is my avenue. But and our group, the in-person piece, typically runs about 6 to 16. People come, people go. There are some people who come back regularly. But the email group, periodically I have sent out emails saying, hey, if you want to be taken off of this list, let me know. And over the years, I've had so many that have reached out to me and say, I may never have stepped inside of a meeting, may never respond to you. But when I get that monthly email saying that the group is meeting on day X, or when I get an email from me, typically if I find something out on Facebook or anything like that I find touches me and might touch them, any time of the day, week, month, they can all expect to hear something from me. And I like to share, and I find that it's that makes the difference. I don't have a counseling degree, but I care. I'm getting better now that I'm not working and I don't have a zillion doctor's appointments, to trying to reach out to people and asking them if they're okay. We assure confidentiality. When I send out an email, I send it all via BCC, and they say it's painful, but at the same time, they can't stay away because it gives them the support. Even as a leader myself, the week leading up to Wayne's passing is always really tough for me. But I'm open with them, and it builds up to the day of, and then it settles down. Yeah, I see you nodding your head. And the same thing with Wayne's birthday. So I've come to expect that now.
My husband and I participate in the worldwide candle lighting ceremony that the organization does every year, and it's such a source of peace and comfort for both of us. And I like to envision it as this giant wave of light that travels around the world as people light their candles in each time
Yeah.
zone for the children we have lost. It's so very powerful for me.
Yeah, for me, the very first year that I went, it was so touching. My daughter comes, my stepdaughter comes, and yeah, it's it's a way of bringing Christmas in, because for many of us, I think if not for my children and my grandchildren, when Wayne was little, I would call him, he'd be out playing or something, and he would never respond. And he would say, I'd go, Wayne, and he's like, you coming to dinner? And I said, why aren't you coming? And he's like, I was beginning to wonder if he had a hearing problem. And he said, Mom, I'll come, but you didn't call me by my right name. And I said, what's your name, Wayne? And he said, my name is not Wayne. My name is Michael. And he's like, if you call me Michael, I will come. And I said, I will not call you Michael. And that went on for probably a couple of years. I have my beliefs about Wayne being Michael in another life, but my daughter found love and has since remarried, and she got pregnant, and she was looking for trying to decide on a name. She found out it was going to be a boy, and she wanted it to be a family name. And I have an uncle who's a priest, and his name is Michael, and so she chose the name Michael because it was a good family name, and Father Mike was really good to her over the years when Wayne died and her husband died and her father died. And when she chose the name, I said, Giselle, remember when you were little? And Wayne refused to answer to the name and he wanted to be called Michael. And she said, oh my, I forgot. So there's this special connection that we all have with Michael, who's unique in and of himself. But it was sweet to have that connection as well.
I love those stories too.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways you continue to honor Wayne, keep his spirit living?
By sharing the story as I am with you. I have walked and raised money for the American Heart Association. I want to raise awareness about the importance of good heart health. Last night we had a meeting, and of the people who were present, 3 of us had children who died at a young age of heart failure. One particular lady whose child also died at the age of 33. I try and share as much as possible about educating people on what to say and what not to say. I worked at Androscoggin Bank for 18 years. At work, if somebody would die or something, somebody would reach out to me and to say, tell me how I work with them. But I try and educate people, whoever they are. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to care. When I bring on a new member, I provide information. I have a list of reading materials. I have a bunch of pamphlets from the Compassionate Friends and online resources, including yours, while I focus specifically on grieving parent, grandparent, siblings. There's a lot of common denominators. So I speak up as often as I can. It's so important to members of the group, and I'm sure you must know that people say the right thing. It's like, that, I just want to talk to people and say, if somebody has passed, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be present and check in with them. And long after the family has come and gone, or friends have come and gone, or the funeral is over, just let them know that you care. I've taken a writing course. Some of the stories that I tell about Wayne, I want to write them down. I like to believe that I'm going to be around for a long, long time. But I want my family and my grandchildren to know my son, and all of the idiosyncrasies that were about him and what made him special. When my daughter got married a couple of months ago, she had a place at the wedding for not only my son, but others who had passed, and around Thanksgiving or something, we will, as we say grace, we try and bring in a memory, and we talk about him so much that my grandson, Wayne, is very present in his life.
Right. Make them part of their everyday conversation. I think I've shared this before in another podcast, but Colby and I do that in a really unique way. And it was his idea many years ago, not long after Cassidy had passed. But we were starting to talk about how we might forget all the things, how are we going to preserve all these memories of Cassidy? So we started a journal that we shared with each other, and he would write a memory and leave it on my bedstand, and then I'd write a memory and put it back on his. And we've actually continued it through college, where he would write a piece and send it to me electronically, and I would print it and add it to the book. And those are just ways that we just want to keep their memory alive.
Died the day he was buried, actually. I started a letter to him. I wrote in it. It was an ongoing letter. And I'd find him answering me back, And, I have never been able to be angry because he died, because I will always be grateful that I had him for 33 years, And I find that I live life much more fully now, because I'm living life for the two of us, you know? Um, he's the man he was named after, my brother, died 2 years ago, and so now I'm living for all of them. And since my cancer diagnosis, since all of this went down last summer, I have to say that I am the happiest. Life has so much more meaning to me now than it ever did. Part of it is because I faced the possibility that it could end, and I have so much to live for, and I'm living, whatever I do now, I'm doing it for the two of us, for all of us.
That's very powerful. As we wrap up today's conversation, I want to ask you, how would you like us to remember your son, Wayne?
As a loving, kind, gentle giant who used to look out for people who were less fortunate than him, and had this unique sense of humor, but someone who also had a ton of love. I have every card that he ever gave me, and I have a tattoo on my back with his signature that said, "Love, Wayne," because that's what he was all about.
Well, thank you for your important and valuable work with the grief community, and for sharing how we can all meet grief with more compassion. We are truly honored to say Wayne's name with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this podcast helpful, please share our link with others and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. I'm Monica Charette, reminding you that you are never alone in your grief. Until next time, we'll be right here with you, holding the light.
As long as you love